Well, hello, my friends. We meet again. It has been a while. Where should we begin? I have a very interesting tale to tell you guys about here today, all about this little known 90s metal supergroup, which featured an absolutely all-star lineup. But was it any good? We will go through the whole thing track by track here, but first, some backstory. I was watching the utterly fantastic documentary Death by Metal, and something in there caught my ear that I didn't notice the first time.
There was no hiatus going on. There just wasn't a lot of live activity. I know there was Voodoo Club and then Voodoo Cult.
Whoa! I mean, what's this? I watched this years ago, but I must have missed this, I guess. Apparently, Chuck was in a band called Voodoo Cult with Dave Lombardo of SLAYER? What did he say? What? Why have I never heard of this? So, yeah, I went online and did some digging, and well, sure enough, Voodoo Cult was a short-lived German thrash metal band in the mid-90s, and look, there's our man himself, right alongside Dave Lombardo on the personnel list. And wait, isn't that the guy from KREATOR as well? Yeah, I mean, sure enough it is, right? An unknown supergroup in the midst of the 90s, which no one ever talks about or even mentions. Well, you know, I think there's a good reason why nobody really talks about that, but we'll get to that in just a minute here. But I just want to say, check out my band Soul Runner's latest single, KREATOR. We have a lot more stuff coming up in short order, so make sure you subscribe to both the Soul Runner official channel and, of course, this one as well. Also, I stream every Friday here on YouTube, checking out some new music, so come hang out. It's every Friday afternoon, North America time. All right, let's get back to the voodoo here. So Voodoo Cult is the brainchild of Philip Boa, who was most well known for being the singer of German indie, new wave / alternative group, I guess you would call them, Philip Boa and the Voodoo Club. Our man Phil must have loved voodoo as he started both a club and a cult of it. Philip Boa and the Voodoo Club are this sort of like indie alternative type of band who were and still are popular and successful in their home country of Germany, but you know, we don't really care about Voodoo Club here. We want the Voodoo Cult. I will say it's a little bit confusing branding here, having two of your bands having basically the same name. Despite having, you know, nothing really to do with each other musically, but, you know, I mean, go off, King, right? After the success of many albums in the late 80s and early 90s, Philip would make a hard pivot towards heavy metal. I assume despite him fronting an indie band, our man Philip is probably a big fan of heavy metal behind the scenes. So you gotta respect a guy, you know, kind of shooting his shot. So in 1993, he and his manager would send out many letters to various metal musicians that Philip was a fan of.
Because I had the big advantage that I'm not from the metal scene. I'm more from an indie, weird, alternative pop band. So I was quite neutral, you know, and I wrote to a lot of people and manager helped a bit in this, and I tried to get you, for example, and all the bands that I like.
Now, there are actually two Voodoo Cult albums, but for this one, I'm going to be focusing on their 1994 debut, which is entitled Jesus Killing Machine. The second one does not have Dave or Chuck on it, right? Now, this is a very interesting and somewhat notable record for the absolutely star-packed ensemble of members featured on this project, right? In addition to Philip, who's himself very notable in Germany, we have Dave Lombardo, who played drums in SLAYER, obviously, as well as on this entire album. We also have Mike Petroza of KREATOR on guitar, Waldemar Sorita, who was part of the German thrash scene of the 80s. He contributed guitar as well as production, mixing, and recording of the album. Of course, we have the almighty Chuck Schuldiner of Death fame, who contributed some guitar solos on a few songs, but more on that later when we get to the songs themselves. Okay, Varvis, you might say, that is all well and good. But how in God's name did an unknown indie musician, unknown, you know, in America, right, managed to court several of metal's best musicians to play in his band? Philip himself explains in an MTV interview that he felt like his outsider image to the metal scene really helped his cause, as did his manager and himself sending out many letters to all of his favorite metal musicians. Which, you know, I assume was a nice and political answer to the question, which in hindsight seems to be quite obvious, why who he got to play here, right? Dave Lombardo left SLAYER in 1992 due to the birth of his first child, so he was more or less free to spend some time in the studio. Chuck Schuldiner had to cancel another leg of a European tour and blew up his band again, and seemed to be involved with a lawsuit with his manager, so he was also free to contribute some music. Mike Petroza and KREATOR were also in a creative and successful lull after their 1992 release renewed. In short, all three musicians were more or less free, and you know, the cynic in me says they were probably in need of some cash, right? I mean, who isn't in need of some cash? Of course, right? Of which I assume Philip Boa was quite flush with after the recent string of successful records. So basically, in my mind, he sent all these guys some letters and, you know, offered some cash and got them to join in on the voodoo cult. Which, you know, fair enough, right? Get the bag, boys. Get the bag. Thus, with his star-studded lineup secure, the album Jesus Killing Machine was released in February 1994 in Germany only, so I guess it kind of makes sense why nobody really heard about it over here. Now, Jesus Killing Machine, the album title, must be the most non-metal guy comes up with a metal album title ever, right? It's honestly hilarious and just so extremely German. In fact, this whole album, you know, the song titles and lyrics, just undeniably extremely German, and that kind of corny, overly enthusiastic, you know, edgy German sense, right? If you know any German people, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Tut mir leid, Brudis, ich liebe euch alle immer noch. I actually, you know, quite like the album cover here, and for like a mid-90s thrash metal record, I actually think it's done very well. And honestly, I feel like this cover could be released today and it wouldn't look that out of place. Barbus, you may scream, what about the music? Enough of the backstory, let's get into it here. Well, honestly, boys, it really varies greatly in quality between the tracks here. And, you know, let's just get it out of the way, right? Chuck Schneider doesn't contribute any writing, riffs, or anything other than a few solos. You know, much to my chagrin when researching this, which looks like he recorded them on his own time in Florida, considering Morrisound Studios is credited on the album, which is very interesting, right? Mike Petroza has a writing credit on the song Blood Surfer City alongside Dave Ball, and Dave Lombardo curiously gets a writing credit on Born, Bad, and Sliced, which is another very German song title. The vast majority of the songs were written, of course, by Phil, Dave Ball, and Sarikta. Philip Ball was also in charge of the lyrics, and thus I also assume the song titles. So it all kind of makes sense. Let's go, boys. Let's go through this album, and I'll give you my thoughts on all the songs on here. Let's go. So the album starts off with easily the highlight and the strongest song in this entire album, Killer Patrol. This song actually does feature a pretty killer main guitar riff. It's a pretty good riff. I like it quite a bit, right? It goes pretty damn hard, and no wonder this was chosen to be the first song for the record. It was also given a music video, which you can actually find on YouTube. I don't think Dave Lombardo is playing drums in that video, though. The main hook here is decent, and to his credit, on this song, Philip actually sounds pretty good. Reading reviews of this album online, it is clear that his vocals are sort of the main sticking point for a lot of people. And you know, well, I get it, right? But here on the first song, Killer Patrol, he sounds pretty good. Besides this one part just after the bridge, which is honestly just hilarious. I don't know what sound he was making there. And you know, Dave Lombardo's drumming in this record is just, you know, it's okay, right? It's nothing mind-blowing. You know, it's a solid hired gun performance. And, you know, the drums in this album at least sound really good. So you gotta give them that. Production-wise, this whole song and the album in general sounds excellent, really full and crisp. It really makes that main riff hit way harder than it has any right to. Overall, I'd say Killer Patrol is a good metal song. Gets a big
yeah, buddy, it's on now
from me here, boys. Metalized Kids is the next track, and well, this ain't it, Chief. You know, I'm not one to poo-poo on many things in this channel, but man, the vocals in this song just really are not very good at all. Very mumbly, and they almost sound buried in the mix as well. It kind of sounds like Philip Boa just got hammered and went to the studio and started shouting.
Metalized kids, metalized kids. Metalized kids, metalized.
Unfortunately, this is kind of a common theme throughout this album, this sort of like mumbly, heavily Germany accented, kind of drunk sounding vocals. I don't know, it's strange. The hook here, right, on this song is pretty insipid, and the song just really has nothing going on besides like a C tier main riff. Easy skip on this one. This song gets a
What is that? Oh my God.
from me. Jesus Killing Machine changes up the vibe quite a bit from the two extremely dark sounding songs before it. The main riff is pretty good here as well though, I gotta say. Pretty groovy with a nice head bobbing rhythm to it. Big old school metal vibes and influence on this song, which I think really sort of suits his voice, as this is easily Philip's best vocal performance on this record. He sounds legitimately good here, and I think that's mostly because he's actually singing rather than yelling. Philip is a great singer, and I wish he used that approach more on other songs rather than the shouting thing. I think it would have been a better result. Lyrics here are extremely cheesy in like the most German way possible. The lyrics go, killing machine, Terminator, 777, the majesty of no dynasty, kill all the cosmic idiots, sucks and scraps the dirt and scum, the Ark of Noah, Mark II, thank Jesus, hope they get what they deserve. Absolute poetry. But luckily for us, because of his very thick German accent, most of the lyrics are actually pretty difficult to understand anyways. Probably for the best. Jesus Killing Machine gets another.
Yeah, buddy. It's on now.
From me. Great track here, actually. Next up, we have Born Bad and Sliced, which maybe be the most notable song in this record for the sole fact that this song was co-written by Lombardo and features Chuck Schuldiner as well as Valdemar trading off solos near the end. Very, very cool. So I guess this is the closest to a Death and Slayer collab, I guess, on this record here. I'm also 98% sure that this song is an E standard, making it the only official song ever released that featured Chuck playing an E standard. Although he just did the solo here, so he probably just recorded a solo in D standard, but that is something notable. Song-wise, it's just another okay song. The main riff here isn't that great, but the bass playing is pretty cool. Maybe contender for the worst song title on the album, however. You know, the chorus is actually pretty good, despite the somewhat strange lyrics. Philip sounds great in the chorus too, very powerful and melodic vocals here. The solo section is what we are all here for though, right? And well, it is incredibly disappointing, man. Chuck and Valdemar trade off solos, and for some reason, Chuck's solo is just buried in the mix completely. You can honestly like barely hear what Chuck is playing. I think he contributed the first and third solos here just based off, you know, his style and, you know, what we know Chuck to play, right? It really sounds like his solo there. The little bits that you can hear, that is, right? I mean, like, if this song didn't have the novelty of featuring, you know, some very influential and important musicians in metal history, it probably really wouldn't have anything else to offer. This one gets a... okay. From me here. Now we have Albert is a Headbanger. This song is actually essentially like a heavier cover of the same song, which was released previously on a Voodoo Club album. Excuse me. And in all honesty, it's a pretty good track. After listening to the album a few times, I actually caught myself, you know, sort of mumbling, the Albert is a headbanger, Albert is a headbanger, Albert is a headbanger. In my, you know, heaviest German accent I could put on. Pretty catchy chorus. Despite the nice hook there, the track does get a little bit long in the tooth near the end there. I do like this heavier version much more than the original. You know, this is a decently enjoyable track. The song also probably has the best solo on the entire album. And honestly, I have no idea who played it. Only Chuck and Valdemar have any solos contributed to them, which they aren't on this song, so maybe it was Mike from KREATOR here. Certainly sounds like him, but it could have easily been Gabby as well. If anybody knows, leave it down in the comments. If Philip Boa somehow watches this, please let me know. I'd love to know. And you know, to be honest, I have no idea who recorded the rhythm guitars either. It's not listed anywhere. I've looked tons of places, so yeah, if anyone knows, please leave that down in the comments. But yeah, Albert is a Headbanger gets a...
yeah, buddy. It's on now.
From me. Hallatio comes after, and honestly, this song, besides the honestly kind of ludicrous and hilarious name, it's just like a below average mid 90s thrash song with perhaps Phillips' worst vocal performance on the entire record. This song ain't it either, Chief. It gets a
I'm gonna give you some homemade fuck-offs right now.
from me. Now, Death Don't Dance starts out with a bang, getting right into the riffs, and has this cool sort of additional sound of this organ ringing out throughout the most of the song. Gives it a nice texture, but kind of gets old after a while. Notable, this may be the only metal song in history to ever mention playing chess, which Philip drills into his head that he's quite bad at it. You know, I don't like the song at all. It's like 4 minutes of the same dynamic, the same riffs, and insipid chorus lyrics. You know, just be honest, don't like the song at all. This one gets a
What is that? Oh my God.
from me. Art Groupie is the next song, and for some reason this song sounds notably worse than the others here. Maybe it was recorded at some other studio. I mean, who knows? The guitars are missing their power and punch that they have in the previous songs, which really takes away from the album here, right? It also immediately made me think of Cyrus's theme song from Trailer Park Boys. If you know, you know. The main riff is just bad. And honestly, this is probably my least favorite song on here. Even worse than the other one before. It just sounds like stock, generic metal you would hear in like a 90s computer game or something. It gets a
What is that? Oh my God.
from me. Okay, boys, 3 songs left. Blood Surfer City. This song is actually pretty good. I like the different vibe it gives. No more of this like erratic kind of chordy thrash sound. It sort of leans more into like the indie alternative vibe. Really good groove on that main riff too. You know, the lyrics are just complete insane nonsense. Let me read you like a verse here. Came by touch of water, muting into killer sharks. First surfers went to heaven, week later heaven. Lost in space in posers race. Only some brave surf idiots swinging their positive power in waves, passing every hour. Canvas of Venice painted in red. Camouflage caused energy and bazookaed him to pieces, which were shown to drooling public. Sharkman gave a final smile when puzzling back died in peace. God gave him Nobel and George Cross Medal, Sonic Star. I mean, just incredible. I put that in the script and just reading it back here right now is just, maybe I'm just too low IQ to understand these lyrics here. I don't know. This song's pretty good though. I do like the song. It gets a
Yeah, buddy. It's on now.
from me. All right, Voodoo Cult, the penultimate song here, which is the other song to actually feature Chuck Schuldiner on guitar. Featuring a main riff only a German could love, this song would just be extremely unremarkable if it wasn't for Chuck's solo. This song just sort of sounds like a hangover, like my head is just pounding from the pulsing, and Philip's just like strangely, drunkenly shouting here. It's just kind of unpleasant, honestly. Chuck's solo doesn't do anything to save the song either. It's a rather unremarkable solo from him, to be honest. Just kind of sounds like he's doing these bends. Really sounds kind of mailed in, to be honest. You know, you'd expect a lot more from him. He only does the first solo you hear. The following ones with all the dive bombs are done by Valdemar. You know, an extremely disappointing song. You want more from these guys. This song gets a
I'm gonna give you some homemade fuck-offs right now.
from me. Now, Bitchery Bay is the last song, and maybe it's supposed to be Butchery Bay, but that's the title, so I don't know. And this song actually gives a nice change from that constant grating rhythm that Voodoo Cult, the song, had. The main riff has a pretty nice and really kind of like syncopated groove to it. I actually really like it. Vocals are pretty decent here as well. Really brings in more of like the alternative side of Philip Boa's personality here. The last solo is actually pretty damn good as well. I wonder if this was also Mike from KREATOR again. Because some of these solos are actually just kind of ripping, and the other ones just sound mailed in. So I really wonder who was doing these best solos here. This song gets a
okay
from me. Ultimately, Jesus Killing Machine just kind of comes off as unfocused. The parts where the band leans more into Philip's alternative sound works much better, as he just doesn't really cut it as an aggressive thrash vocalist, but I actually think he's got a really pretty good job at being a regular powerful singer in metal, right? So I do disagree with a lot of those reviews saying that his singing ruins these songs, as to me, his singing isn't the main problem here. A lot of these songs just don't have much substance to them, right? They have like 2 or 3 parts that just get repeated for 4 minutes, and maybe like 1 bar bridge that's just the bass playing or something. However, right, there are a few legitimately decent tracks on here, like Killer Patrol, Jesus Killing Machine, and Blood Surfer City. You know, just don't read that much into the lyrics, right? I'm gonna give Jesus Killing Machine by Voodoo Cult a solid. You know, without the star-studded cast, this album would almost certainly just be completely forgotten to time. But luckily for us, because of it and because of the novelty of this whole thing, we get to take a step back into this weird mid-90s German metal world where someone who was obviously a big fan of metal got to collab with some of his favorite musicians. And honestly, I think that's pretty cool, and it was a really interesting story and feeling to dive into this album. So thank you for joining me on this. If you want to see more content like this, let me know down below. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe. Consider supporting me, becoming a YouTube member, or hitting Patreon. Appreciate you. I'll see you guys on Friday. Cheers.